Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and today I have all 4 Adventures in the Forgotten Realms commander decks to show off to you. I've got Draconic Rage, the red-green deck. I've got Aura of Courage, the green-white-blue deck. I've got Dungeons of Death, the white-blue-black deck. And last, but certainly not least, Planar Portal, the red-black deck. I'm going to crack all 4 of these decks open and show you all the cards in them and tell a bunch of stories along the way. Ready? Let's do it. We're going to kick things off with Planar Portal. So here's what the back of the box looks like right here. It tells you about what's in the deck, a little bit about the flavor of the character, but I don't need to tell you too much about it because we're about to open it right on up. So, fun little fact, there's a great pull tab on the bottom of these boxes. Easy way to open them, just go like this. And these are our new sustainable packaging that rolled out with the last round of Commander decks we did. And let's see how this turns out here. So we're gonna open it from the bottom, pull out this little case just like such. It's got everything you need right there. This little outer shell, now just a shell. Maybe you can hear it, maybe you can't. I've tossed it to the side. You'll never see that again. Now, here we are. You've got a bunch of counters right here that you can punch out. Either as counters or victory confetti, your choice. Plus and plus one counters, all that kind of stuff you'll find during the game. And that's always pretty nice. Then you've got this deck box. It all fits in here. A nice Adventures in the Forgotten Realms deck box featuring Prosper, the face tiefling himself. Deck shows up in here. It fits a sleeved commander deck, so you can totally sleeve this up. Inside, you'll find this nice little life wheel. These are so great. They go all the way up to 40 life, and they're so easy to use with one hand. It's 21 through 40 on this side, and then 1 through 19 on this side. Makes it super easy to use. And yeah, back when we were in the office, we used these all the time to track everything, which is cool. All right, setting those aside, we then have a little insert here. This insert tells you how to play Commander on one side. If you don't already know, I'm not going to run through exactly how to play Commander here today because, well, we got a lot of other things to look at. But it gives you some strategy on playing the deck too, which is pretty nice. Here's what it says about the Prosper Planar Portal deck. And yeah, information on Commander. On the other side, you'll find information on all of the legends in the product, which is kind of cool. Or at least the main 3 legends here, Lorcan, Karazar, and Prosper. All kinds of fun flavor. I'm not going to read it all out loud, but you're welcome to freeze frame this video and check it out for yourself. Lots of fun material, but let's get into the heart and soul of all of this, which I know many of you will want to see, which is the deck itself. So here it is right here, Prosper Tomebound in all its foil glory on the front. And you find a little pull strip on this, and it all unravels. We begin to see the cards in this deck. Now, we saw this in Strixhaven for the first time too, but one thing you will find at the front here is, one thing you'll find at the back here is a version of Prosper that is thicker than normal. So this continues here. Here's Prosper on this kind of thicker cardstock. And it's kind of just a nice, cool version of the Commander that really has some heft when you drop it onto the table. The normal version still comes in here. This is a version you will put in a sleeve. You'll play in any kind of competitive deck. If you choose to put it in such, this would go in your cube. But the thicker version, because you don't put your Commander into your deck anyway, it's just a nice thing to have around. Makes it kind of cool version to helm your Commander deck with. So here's what Prosper does. A 1/4 Death Toucher that exiles cards from the top of your library and then rewards you for playing exiled cards. Kind of a little exile cast theme here in red-black. And the deck will be doing plenty of stuff in that space here, as well as other delightful Warlock Chaos. Fun story fact, all 4 of these decks, the front-facing character, all 4 of them are in a party together in the Forgotten Realms. So let's see what Prosper's up to. So there's Prosper, or if you're not as interested in playing the hero, as it were, although in red-black isn't always necessarily the hero, but here they are part of the hero adventuring party. You can play a monster. Every deck has a backup legend that is a monster. So here is a Beholder. We wanted to pick some pretty iconic monsters from around the Forgotten Realms, and this is kind of a goad theme going with it, which is pretty fun. You get to goad their creatures and then encourage them to attack each other. What a blast Karazar the Eye Tyrant is. I think a cool thing about this commander deck to kick it off immediately is both these tell you to go in pretty different directions. So you really have two pretty different decks you can build right out of the box using these two legends alone. Or there's another monocolored legend, which we'll get to in a little bit in Lorcan. Some new cards from the main set appear in here too. We've got Warlock class, we've got Chasm Channeler, which exiles some cards on top of your library for you. You find some prisoners, more exile cast. Then we get into some of the new cards. Bucknard's Everfull Purse. This shows up in multiple decks in this set. And one thing you'll find right away is it rolls a D4. So let me tell you a little story. When we were working on Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, we all knew we were going to roll D20s as soon as we started playing with the mechanic. It just felt such at home. We did a bunch of user research and found what people really expected from a D&D Magic set. There was a lot of questions about the other dice, and it was clear that for the main set, it was just too much. We weren't going to go down that path for the main Adventures in the Forgotten Realms set. Carrying a D20 around was doable. You could put it in the pre-release kits. You could have it on the companion app, things like that. But having a whole bag of dice was a bridge too far, especially for a competitive format. But working on Commander, we thought, well, hey, if there's a place to do it and do it in small quantities, and Commander is a kind of like board gamey style thing, a thing that we think D&D players would especially gravitate toward format-wise, doing it here can make a lot of sense. So all the other main D&D dice show up in Commander. We've got D4s, D6, D8, D12, and of course, D20. And Bucknard's Everfull Purse is one of these. Now, there was a lot of interesting design challenges in how do you not just make these equivalent to flip a coin? How do you make these feel different? And we'll get to some of the other ways we solve this in a little bit. But with a D4, well, 1 through 4 is a number that you could get something out of, and treasure is an interesting thing you could get from that. So Bucknard's Everfull Purse makes you 1 D4 treasure, scales appropriately, and you pass around the table. Everyone gets a little bit of treasure. The purse is certainly extremely full. Ebony Fly. So we are, as I said in a video not that long ago, we are trying to not really make more 2-mana rocks unless they're around for very specific reasons. In general, you won't see too many of them. This one, though, we felt okay doing. First of all, it is not, I think, stronger than a lot of the current mana rocks that are out there. For mini decks, there will be some decks that really want this. For example, a die rolling focused deck, or one that is really evasive focused. But yeah, it's kind of a specific thing. I've seen a lot of chatter around this online. I think people are mostly under consensus like, yep, it's an option. It's not better than the untapped mana rocks in a lot of decks, but you can play it if you need to, and it can turn it into a creature and do all that good creature-y stuff. Even like I said, that said though, we're trying to get away from 2-mana rocks, so I would not expect to see too many more of these. This is kind of right on the cusp of when we were making that philosophy. So not impossible, but yeah. For as far as new cards go, you can expect us to be trying 3-mana rocks with upside as opposed to trying to make these 2-mana rocks that find their narrow space with alongside things like Signets and Mindstone, which are hard to compete against. Underdark Rift. Well, hey, speaking of cards that roll different dice, here's the D10 rolling card, and yeah, scaling off of the exact number you rolled is a pretty important part of these, rather than just doing a chart like we did with the D20s. And with this one, it was like, well, what's about the right number? Is it D4 is too small? D6 could be, but D10 seemed like, and D8 same deal, but D10 felt like the right number to do here. If you roll well, you could put something 10 cards beneath, which means that they'll never really see it. But even on a land, frankly, putting it 2 or 3 or even 4 cards deep is still quite strong. So yeah, Underdark Rift, cool stuff. Good to see that here. All right, now we're into some of the reprints. We've got Tysis. The cards that cast from exile, there's a lot of fun ways to do it. Suspend is one that synergizes with Prosper. So you'll learn a lot in this deck about ways to cast things from exile. Light up the Stage, another one that can do that, which is pretty fun. Some cool reprints here. Always love seeing this. This is a Goad card, by the way, which plays well with the other face commander, Karazar, right? Cascade casts cards from exile. You might not know it immediately, but indeed, Throes of Chaos cast spells from exile. So yeah, lots of fun ways to learn about how you can cast cards from exile in this deck. Always efficient. Rakdos Charm, glad to see that around. Pinpoint removal, important. These days we like making sure that we have a solid base of mana ramp. We've really started to dial in these commander decks and kind of what players expect from them. So we've got Arcane Signet, Commander Sphere, Fel Warstone, big reprint here, by the way. Really glad to have this. And I've seen some comments online about, hey, are you going to keep reprinting this? And the answer is, yeah, we're totally okay reprinting Fel Warstone. It hasn't shown up for a while, just for whatever reason, but yeah, now going forward, you can expect to see Felwar Stone indexed where it makes sense. It'll be indexed in the biodome, especially where the other colors are represented. For example, if this was the only red deck out of the 4 decks, you'd probably not see Felwar Stone because playing them all together, you couldn't make red mana. But otherwise, it's totally fair game as an option. So yes, we've got nice mana rocks here. A little Ascend card and a Razka Relic. Probably will get 10 permanents with this deck without too much trouble. You got all the treasure stuff, right? Rakdos Signet, Soul Ring, of course. Talisman of Indulgence, another nice one. Once again, we have nothing against reprinting the talismans, just got to be the right deck for it. So totally happy to do that. Going into the mana base, we got some nice staples, Bojuka Bog, Mortuary Mire, get something back on top, which is nice. This is particularly nice with your exile your top card and you can play it this turn effects because you get to choose what is on top of your library to exile and let you play this turn. Okay, now let's talk about some other new cards here. Bag of Devouring. I hinted at this back in my AFR hints video. But yeah, this is the evil version of a previous card, the Bag of Holding. And it's fun making top-down D&D cards, and the Bag of Devouring is a pretty fun one. A fun concept. Yeah, don't stick your hand in there. Another D10 card here. Dance Macabre, or Dance Macabre, excuse me. I always want to say Macabre. It's not how you say it. It's Dance Macabre. This has gotten a lot of comparisons, I think, to Ever After. I think this card will see a decent amount of play. It's pretty easy to hit the 15 plus if you sacrifice a high toughness creature, which is nice. And yeah, if you can get back 2 creatures this way, it's great. Otherwise, you just kill off one of their things and get it back for yourself, like almost a little mind control. But the fact that it hits everyone, right? Each player stacks a thing is so nice. And yeah, like I said, pretty easy to get to the 15 plus on this. This is a pretty strong one, I think. We tried to mitigate dice rolling has variance, so we didn't want to mitigate it entirely, but we wanted to make sure it was more controlled with a lot of the dice rolling cards to make it so, especially in Commander, where we wanted bigger dice rolling effects, you wouldn't feel quite as bad about it if you rolled low. And so there's a cycle of these among the decks that has you roll and then adds something to the roll. And there's another cycle we'll get to later where you roll 2 dice and then you get to pick one for each of 2 different effects, which allow you to mitigate weak dice rolls. Death Tyrant. Yeah, these are really scary if you're playing D&D. You do never want to see one of these in your D&D campaign. Beholder Skeleton is an undead beholder. They are very scary, very frightening. And like I said, this is one thing we wanted to do was just get more D&D tropes captured, kind of as an extension of the set, because there was so much to do. And the Death Tyrant is one thing we could not get into the main set, but we're extremely happy to get here in the Commander decks. Grim Hireling, this deck has a bit of a treasure theme. Prosper makes treasure, remember, after all. And so this allows you to crack your treasures to give creatures -X/-X. Plus, it generates a ton of treasure on its own. Keep in mind, if you hit 3 different players, this will make 2 for each different player that you hit. So in the Biodome, if you're playing in a 4-player game, which you often are, if you hit all 3 of your opponents, you'll create a whopping 6 treasure, which you can then cash into this immediately, spending 1 treasure to activate it and 5 treasures perhaps to give a creature -5/-5, or just cast a big thing from your hand. So yeah, this card makes a lot of mana very quickly. This card has generated so much discussion. I love these kind of effects. These kind of, oh, you're attacking me? Fine. All right, let's go then. But I love that it's in your hand. Unlike No Mercy, which is on the table, these kind of enchantments, which are like, I should just never attack this person. In your hand is great because 1, you can bluff it, which is a lot of fun. Do they have it? Do they not have it? Right? It's always a cool moment. And 2, when you do cast it, it's a surprise in many cases, which is yeah, I think a lot more fun than just the never attack me kind of thing that you get going on with a card like No Mercy. So yeah, this card is a blast. Love the design of it, and I hope it sees a lot of play because I think it just makes games more fun. And excuse me, I was bumping my camera there a little bit, but fix that problem. Here it is, Lorcan, Warlock Collector. So in these decks, there are 2 legends that can command the deck, a minimum in each, although the red-green one, I believe, gets a 3rd. And then there's also a monocolor legend in this deck, and some of the others. And Lorcan is the example here. Yeah, well, I mentioned this in my Collector Booster video, but a lot of people are very excited about building around this, which for me, when you get people excited about building a monocolor legend, that's always a win because, almost always win, I should say, there are probably exceptions, but almost always a win just because monocolor is at a natural disadvantage. So I look forward to seeing what you all do with Lorcan and what nonsense you build with it. Fiend Lash, rar, yeah, a little bit of my pain, my pain, your pain, I guess. If you're gonna hurt me, we're gonna hit you too. Always a fun thing to have on a political style card where you can hang it back on a creature, and yeah, no one wants to attack me because I might hit you for it. So here's an example of the roll 2 of a dice card. In this case, you roll 2d12. These were really, I think, they're hard to get right, but really important to making sure that you could roll dice and feel like you always get a result you like. Yes, you could roll 2 1s, but that will happen not very often. So in this case, you're going to roll 2d12s, and most of the time you're going to want to use the higher roll on hitting the creatures, but maybe not. Maybe you want to just, try and make 10 treasure out of this card or something and get 3 mana back. So really, I'm happy with how this turned out. And Glenn Jones was the lead designer of these decks. I think he did a great job threading this needle. And him and I talked a lot early in design about how we were going to make dice rolling implemented here. And Aaron Forsyth, I know, was super interested in doing a lot of different kinds of dice direction. And I think this kind of a design is a great solve, and especially a great way to use all the different dice types. So yeah, you'll see more as we go along. Share the Spoils is a blast. This is a fun red kind of group benefit card, which you don't see very often. Red is not very good about sharing with the group, but here it does. And you all will get to cast some cards off players' libraries. This is definitely a mini game card. You play this, and suddenly there's a whole new mini game about casting cards from this stack and playing lands from this stack. But it's pretty fun. Try playing this on turn 2. Wild Magic Sorcerer. I love Cascade, so pretty easy sell here. Once again, means that every spell you cast from exile, which you're doing this deck anyway, thanks to Prosper, will re-trigger, which is pretty cool. And yeah, you can get some pretty wonky cascades going with this. If you're a very mean person, you could definitely set up a 1 mana card to cascade into a guaranteed restore balance or something like that. But of course, you're a nice person, right? You certainly would never do a thing like that. Fevered Suspicion. I really enjoy these kind of high variance cards that play with the cards off your opponent's library. I love Cascade, and this essentially cascades your opponent's deck, right? You flip until they hit something, and then you get to cast all of them. It's an 8 mana spell, so not always easy to make happen, but happens twice thanks to Rebound. I'm also a huge fan of reusing mechanics in these decks, which is a lot of fun. I love finding on-theme mechanics to use, so really cool to have Rebound here. Yeah, this is a combination of a red and a black thing. Black can steal things and kill things. Red can cast things from exile, so a fun little marriage here to create a kind of wonky removal / mind control style effect. This one went through a ton of different iterations. I remember like 6 mana versions of this card and all kinds of other stuff, but I think it ended up in a solid spot. And then we got a reprint of Chittering Witch, not seen I think since the Brawl decks, by the way. Some cool reprints here. Dead Man's Chest, that's a card I have not seen in a long time. Wonky little, I believe, Rivals of Ixalan card there. Lots of cool reprints. Gonti's in here. Hex, one of my favorites. When killing 5 just isn't enough, note that that's 6 words in the flavor text, which is always a fun little note on my end. Ogre Slumlord, nice reprint to have around. Apex of Power, Chaos Warp, Communal Lava. Communal Lava, I know we talked about for a little while because it's really awkward to cascade into, right? You cascade into your X spell. You want to usually try and avoid that combination, but it was so good in this deck, we decided to keep it. I'll be curious to know what you all think. Big reprint here in Disrupt Decorum. Plays super well with Karazar, the Beholder commander. Yeah, really happy to have this one reprinted again. I am responsible for designing. Well, I don't want to take full credit for designing this card. It was originally in C17. It was a creature that came into play and goaded all creatures target player controls. And then I handed it off to development, and they're like, "Well, that's pretty fun, but what about if it was just goaded all of your opponent's creatures?" And I think the end result was a lot more fun. So really cool to see that here. All kinds of stuff. Is it Chemister, Ignite the Future, Tectonic Giant is back. Some nice red-black exile cast stuff. Chaos Wand is here. And then, yeah, Mana Base. Got new art on these, I believe. Here's some new art on Shadowblood Ridge. We tend to use these a lot in our commander deck, so happy to get new art for them. upgrading off the Odyssey art. Tainted Peak, Shell Far and Void. Helps once again manipulate the top card of your library. And a myriad of basics, showing off. Sometimes we like choosing all the same basic or all basics from the same thing. Here it's just, well, these are all AFR basics. Give you a variety of them because they all have different flavor text we thought was appropriate to do here. So you can kind of read through and see all the different flavor text options. And then token-wise, at the very end, we got some rats, of course, for Chittering Witch. We got some servos for Marionette Master and some Thopters. On the backside, we've got plenty of treasure, of course, for the Face Commander, as well as some zombies. And then a little information about formats and what you can do on your turn if you're newer to the game. So that is the Planar Portal deck. Talking through the cards there, helmed once again by Prosper, the tome-bound right here. And now let's go into the next deck. Which one should I do next? Oh, I don't know. Let's grab one of the 3-color decks. Let's take a look at Secrets of the Hidden Ways. So this is an interesting one. When we're doing these set-aligned commander decks, we like to do some things that are tied into the themes of the set, especially when we're doing all 4 decks. But also we're going to do some things that are a little more off the beaten path. So the red-black Cast from Exile deck, a little more off the beaten path. This one, though, is all about dungeons and what's going on with those. So it is a dungeon commander deck with a bit of a reanimator bent. I'm going to throw this one over my shoulder again. You can hear it crash in the background there. It's sitting in a pile with everything else. So once again, you get these great punch-out counters for your victory confetti, of course. And here's our deck box for Sephiroth. Let's see what's inside. So we've got this, got the little insert in here that will tell us once again how to play Commander, which I know you probably don't need, but it also tells you a bit about Sephiroth. So I'm gonna open it up just so I can you can freeze frame it if you want to. And is freeze frame still a thing people say? I guess it's not really like a function. I'm just from the 90s, I guess. But yeah, information about Sephiroth you can freeze frame if you want. Information on the Commander rules. And then on the back side, some info on all the different legends we got here. We got Sephiroth, of course, followed by Nahulor, who's a Mind Flayer. Learn about them in a moment. And then Min, who's pretty awesome as an Illusion Lord here. So once again, pause it if you want to read about these characters. But let's take a look at the cards because that's where the most exciting stuff truly lies here. All right. Sephiroth of the Hidden Ways. Let's take a gander. And apologies if I bumped my camera a little bit here. There's a lot of product with these commander decks, and I just don't want to cause you too much nausea, but I'm trying to set everything off to the side here so it's off screen. Tight quarters. All right, so here's Sephiroth of the Hidden Ways, and then back here we've got our thick Sephiroth of the Hidden Ways. What's going on with Sephiroth? Well, how about you take a look? It's all about venturing into the dungeon and then reanimating the things that go into your graveyard. So it's a fun little fusion of Reanimator and dungeons. So if you've been having a fun time playing with it in Draft on Arena so far, for example, well, you might really enjoy taking a commander size spin at it. And if you're not a huge fan of dungeons, don't worry. At its core, this allows you to reanimate a bunch of stuff too. So you're kind of using dungeon for an advantage here as a means to an end, which I think is pretty fun with Sephiroth of the Hidden Ways. Or if you're like, man, I'm really not into dungeons at all, well, how about a Mind Flayer for you? We got Nihilor here, wonderful legendary creature horror who is a Mind Flayer. And it is pretty mean. You get to steal something from your opponent, and it rewards you for controlling your opponent's stuff. It's sort of a steal your stuff lord. So, you know, if you are the kind of person who loves Agent of Treachery in your opponent's stuff, well, Nihilor is a commander for you. So once again, these take your decks in 2 very different directions, and I appreciate that for the 2 commanders of these decks, you really get to build 2 different commander decks out of it if you want with the pieces, which is sweet. Oh, we've got a couple new cards from Adventures in the Forgotten Realms in here. Minimus Containment, Hamlet Bashar, of course, a key card for being able to double up on all your dungeon effects. We got Dungeon Map. Got Evolving Wilds as a nice reprint, and this is another deck that has Bucknard's Everfull Purse, which we talked about already. A card which we have not talked about yet that shows up in multiple decks, and by the way, you can always identify the cards in commander decks that show up in multiple decks if they are new by their expansion symbol. Common means they appear in every deck. Uncommon means they appear in multiple, but not all of the decks. And rare, it means they appear in just this deck. And mythic rare are the face legends of the deck. So this is an uncommon, so this appears in multiple decks. So we've got the Clay Golem, who rolls a d8 and it becomes monstrous. Monstrosity, a great keyword for a Dungeons and Dragons set. And when it becomes monstrous, you can blow up a permanent. So sort of a meteor golem style effect here. It comes down earlier, and then on turn 6, you can blow something up. Maybe, who knows, maybe we'll get a 12/12 out of the deal too. What's not? It's a nice one. Also still a golem. So meteor golem and clay golem, they can hang out in your golem tribal deck. Good stuff. We've also got component pouch. This is a 3 mana rock that puts counters on and then removes them for 2 mana apiece. So it can't make mana right away because you have to wait 1 turn to roll a d20. But then once you do, it becomes almost a collation relic style card where every other turn, or if you roll the 10 through 20, every turn you are getting, you're just getting 2 mana out of it. So this is actually a pretty efficient 3 mana rock, I think. And yeah, reminds me a lot of Collation Relic, which is a card that I adore. So I think you might see a decent number of play on this one. All right, let's go into some of the reprints. Random Unicorn, Swords to Plowshares. Really nice to have this with this art, by the way. Super nice to have this art on the reprint by Sam Wolf Connolly here. It's pretty cool. Wall of Omens, Muldrifter, of course. I can't print a commander set without Muldrifter. It's too loved. Propaganda, nice reprint to get in here. Make sure you don't get attacked. This text can be on the little slower side, so really great to have this reprint show up. Someday we'll get this art in foil. Someday. Shriekmaw, Unburial Rites, once again, a little reanimated package here. Victimize and Unburial Rites. Stuff's going into your graveyard with Sephiroth, so it's important. And also keep in mind that whenever a creature goes into your graveyard, you get to venture into the dungeon. So creatures that self-sacrifice, like Random Unicorn, like Evoking, are great because they just propel you further and further through that dungeon. And then you reanimate something at the end. So you might evoke your Muldrifter, and then to help go into the dungeon further. And then once you have completed the dungeon, you can bring your Muldrifter right back. So lots of fun synergies here with cards like Shriekmaw, things like that die. Plague Crafter, things that make you sacrifice. It's nice. Solid Removal, Spark, Necrotic Sliver, the great one to bring back. You can also sack it to trigger your stuff. Necrotic Obsessive Stitcher, Vanish into Memory. Fun fact about Vanish into Memory, many people probably don't know, but this was actually a You Make the Card card. Everyone knows Crucible of Worlds, and many other people probably know Waste Not and Mr. Baby Cakes, Forgotten Ancient. But Vanish into Memory is, appropriately enough, often the You Make the Card from the community that players forgot about. So neat to have that one here. Got our Mana Rock package, of course. We got Arcane Signet, Burnish Heart, Commander Sphere. All right, here's something fun. A movable rod. So this is a super iconic D&D card, or D&D item, movable rod. Fun fact, we were toward the end of the design of these commander decks, and this was a blue card. And this is really when discussion around white was starting to pick up. And we knew we needed to do more of white in Commander. We'd already done it in a couple other sets, but I was reviewing the file late in design. I was like, wait a second. This effect, something very similar to this, was in blue. Could this just be a white card? And I pitched it to Glenn, and he's like, oh yeah, we could totally make this a white card. And it's something we're really trying to keep an eye out for is, are there effects that should be in white? Or are there cards that could be white but are in a different color? We're really trying to patrol for those, and this is one that I proudly caught and talked to Glenn, and we got switched into white, which I'm really happy about. So I think it's a great design. It fits the flavor of the movable rod really well, and I'm happy it's now sitting in white. So it makes me glad to see it. And in white decks, it's a way to deal with things, which is really cool, and also give you a little bit of an advantage as you go deeper and deeper into the dungeon. So a neat commander card for sure. So in D&D, the Solars are a special kind of angel. They're pretty powerful. This is a nice one in that you can either pay 1 mana, just venture right away, right? Just do that, discard it, get it out, venture early in the game, or later in the game, you can pay 6 mana for the full retail. I always appreciate when commander cards have flexibility in different modes, and being able to venture not just for 1 mana, but at any time and potentially hit a level that players were not expecting you to hit. For example, shrinking a card, or making a creature not be able to do attack right before combat happens. There can be some pretty effectual stuff in there. Or if you're going through the Tomb of Annihilation, just creating that blocker with Death Touch, the Atropile out of nowhere too. So great way to help complete your dungeons and turbo through dungeons on the top ability. Or turn early in the game, get that dungeon rolling. Revivify. I talked about this a bit in my Collector Booster episode when I opened one up, but One of the tricky things about this card is we kept getting feedback on this card about, wow, it seems like there's such a swing between 1 through 14 and 15 plus, but then we would point out to everyone, well, Unbreakable Formation exists, and that seems to be fine, so why not this? And I'm really happy we got to make this card. It is Unbreakable Formation in many cases, but sometimes you can blink your stuff back and get your ETBs again, which in this deck is quite relevant considering you've got cards like Shriekmaw, and you've got cards like Muldrifter, and also, of course, your commander too. So really happy with how this card turned out. I think in some decks it will be preferred over Unbreakable Formation or in addition to, and some decks will prefer the formation over this. So just more protection spells like this we can get here is good. And putting them in white as opposed to in a place like, say, green with Heroic Intervention. So although that card is reprinted in this product, as we will see later, but we're trying not to make new ones, too many new ones of those. New versions. Thorough Investigation. Thorough Investigation, a way for white to draw cards. You get to investigate basically every turn if you can just keep attacking, which is nice. And then when you crack your clues to draw a card, you get a little bonus on top of it. Really happy with this one. I think it's a great 3-mana way for white to accrue some card advantage over time and also venture into the dungeon, which will accrue you advantage as well, especially if you go through something like the Mad Mage dungeon, which white with a repeated effect like this will help you get to. Of course, you probably want to go through the shortest dungeon if to trigger Sephiroth, but hey, I'm a Mad Mage kind of guy myself, so hard to resist. Arcane Endeavor. This is the blue one of the roll 2 and choose 1 result cycle. Pretty straightforward, but definitely powerful, right? You can draw a bunch of cards with this and then cast a free spell. So 2 great tastes that go well together. I would usually recommend choosing the high number for drawing cards, but depending on what you have in your hand, maybe you want to do something else. Men super love the Illusionist Lord here. I super love this character. I commented, I think, probably too many times to Glenn that my headcanon is Min hangs out with Pyrrh and Toothy. They all kind of do their thing together just because it makes illusions, and, Pyrrh's got his imaginary pet, Pyrrh and Toothy from Battle Bond. But anyway, this is a fun Illusion Lord, and I'm happy with how this one turned out. I'm excited to see what commander decks spring forth from this world. Phantom Steed. This is a card that I thought was just a great flavor hit. A really cool design on this one. I think it's probably pretty powerful, but when blue wants to attack with a creature, like you have to play it, you have to wait a turn. Even though it's got flash, it's still susceptible to removal. The best thing to do, of course, is they're going to kill off your creature. You flash this in response and exile it, and then get this as an option. But yeah, really like this card. I think it's cool. Excited to see how much play it sees. Rod of Absorption. Do not miss that it says total down here. I know some folks were missing this when I was reading the Reddit thread, for example. Yeah, this is a fun kind of top-down Rod of Absorption. That's kind of where that came from. Grave Endeavor. This is the black roll 2 and choose 1. Because there's 4 decks and 5 colors of Magic, we had to put 2 of them in one deck. Hey, it's going to be this deck this time around. So yeah. Big fan of that cycle. Wand of Orcus. Yes, a nice legendary equipment that calls to Orcus, who is a big character in Dungeons and Dragons and cares about zombies. Seemed appropriate for the deck, all about undeath. Extract Brain. Normally in Commander, we try not to mess with players' hands too much. Especially cards in their hand. Yes, we'll make some new cards every now and then, but, targeted discard is generally not seen as that much fun. This is a rare exception where you get to cast a card from someone's hand. So, yeah, it can be pretty powerful. You're going to want to cast it for a big number because lands they show you do not do anything. Keep that in mind. But, yeah, you cast this for, 3. Pretty easy to get something spicy out of it, especially if your opponent's hand is low. Midnight Pathlighter. Just a great way to help venture into the dungeon. Keep in mind that if you attack 3 different players, you can venture 3 times off of this. So that's pretty nice. And this first ability makes your stuff near unblockable. People will have legendary creatures, of course, it's commander, but yeah, this if you thought that giving all your creatures horsemanship was good, well, this is probably the next best thing. Cataclysmic Gearhulk, and into the reprints. Lots of cool reprints here. Things that will help you reanimate, like Karmic Guide, Sun Titan, or just things that are awesome to reanimate with Sephiroth. Things that cycle away, like Curator of Mysteries, are great for that. Also a great reason on the earlier new card I showed you where you can pay 1 mana and discard it to venture. You can discard it away and then reanimate it later on. Fun fact about Necromantic Selection that I think a lot of players might not realize, because of the dies rules change in Commander, you can now steal a commander with this. So if you cast Necromantic Selection and you kill off a commander, you can bring that commander back under your control. Sheldon Menery himself taught me this when I was talking with him. So yeah, be careful with that one. Steal their commanders if you so desire. Solemn Simulacrum, of course, a nice staple. New art here on Darkwater Catacombs. Long time coming. I've used the Odyssey one so many times. Nimbus Maze, little Future Sight reprint here. That's always cool to see. And yeah, Felwar Stone, once again reprinted in this deck. Great staple. Some other mana rocks here. Wayfarer's Bauble, with new artwork, by the way. So Mitch, this one's for you. And you've asked a lot for this to be reprinted. And we are totally not against reprinting it. Just, it's taken a while to show up here. So you'll be seeing more Wayfarer's Baubles in the future of that, I am sure. Lightning Greaves 2, of course, and then some basic lands to round things out. At the back for our tokens, we've got some illusions here for Min. Love little Owlberry style illusions. Lots of illusions for Min. We got some clues for that thorough investigation. And of course we have the dungeons, which you might want to use, which are important. Note this one, the Dungeon of the Mad Mage and the Lost Mine of Phandelver has both dungeons on one card, which is interesting. This is, I think, the only place you can find this. Don't quote me on that. That might be incorrect, but I think it's the only place you can find this. And some of you might want to hold on to this one for just, if you prefer to keep 2 cards in your deck box instead of 3, well, there's something for you. Maybe there's another way. If so, you can let me know in the comments down below. But I think that's the only way we ended up with that. Maybe it's in the bundle somewhere. The bundle has oversized ones, I think. I don't remember. Anyway, that's the deal. Treasure, Goblin, Zombie, all things you want from your dungeon, your skeletons, and of course, Champion of Wits for your Champion of Wits. So that is the dungeon deck that shows up in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. Now let's go on to the other 2-color deck. This is alternate back and forth here. I like the way that kind of works out. I'm just gonna clear some of this garbage on the side from the additional packaging here. I'll pick it up later, but all right, let's take a look at Draconic Rage. So we're about halfway through the show now. At this point in time, usually I like to give a little code word for everyone who's been watching this far, something you can post in the comments to show, yeah, I made it this far. So our code word of the day today, how about we make it, how about we make it Beholder? Can you find a way to sneak Beholder into a comment? Let me know, post it in the comments down below with the word Beholder. Oh my gosh, I'm knocking the camera so much. It's close quarters here on the Good Morning Magic set. My place I live is not that large, so try and do what I can with the set. I am actually working, a little sneak preview for some of you all. I'm actually working on moving into not moving into a new place, but changing the set of Good Morning Magic into a room I'm kind of going to be hijacking to become a permanent set where I can do some cool stuff in, but it's not quite ready yet. Yes, but stay tuned for that in the months to come. But anyway, enough about my personal life, what you can expect in the future of Good Morning Magic. Let's talk about today. So here is the insert for the Draconic Rage red-green deck. You can find all about Vrondis, the Rage of Ancients, right here. I'll once again let you freeze frame if you want, or you can learn about Cloth if you're so interested, or Wolfgar of Icewind Dale. Now this deck is a little unusual in that it does not have a monocolor legend like the other ones. It has 3 red-green legends. I think we talked about, if I recall correctly, we talked about it and just decided that all of them were red-green. Wolfgar made sense as red-green, Cloth made sense as red-green, Vrondis made sense as red-green. So rather than try and bend just a cycle and to check a box, we wanted to do what felt correct for the cards and the characters. We thought the cards were all pretty cool. And here's information about how to play this deck. One thing that's interesting about this deck, and we'll see on Vrondis here in a second, is Vrondis has a trigger that cares about you rolling dice. So yes, this deck has a lot to do with dragons, but you can also, if you want, build Vrondis as a die rolling commander, which is pretty cool. So yeah, we'll show you what Vrondis does here. And I'll grab the cool thick version. I feel like I always have to say that dramatically, thick version, like in I don't know, caps. So yeah, whenever you roll a dice, any kind of dice, 1 or more dice, it deals 1 damage to itself, which then triggers the Enrage ability. So this is a deck that wants you to constantly roll dice and on other players' turns. So lots of fun here. And this is a really interesting build around and one you can put other cards from the main set into, which I think is pretty cool. So here's Vrondis and all its glory, thick version right there. And normal version right here. And then the backup commander, once again, for the red-green dragons deck. Well, how about a dragon? So this is, interestingly, this is a non-flying dragon, right? These are dragonborn, which are a thing for Dungeons & Dragons. We very seldom see non-flying dragons in Magic otherwise. But here we've got a backup legend, the red-green cloth, who is a flying dragon. So that's kind of the difference there. Pretty powerful commander here. Adds a ton of mana to your mana pool. You can use it to cast spells, not abilities. We did think about the combo potential there with a card like Aggravated Assault. I think that's the one that's an enchantment. But yeah, adds a ton of mana to your mana pool. Lets you attack for some damage, then get a bunch of mana to cast. So no complaints here. Once again, two very different decks you can build around, right? And that's really something we tried to do here, where you can open this up, find two different paths to take the deck, and go build something on your own, which is kind of fun. Got some AFR cards here, Barbarian class, of course. Makes your dice rolls more consistent and gives you bonuses for rolling dice, a few die rolling matter cards, which is cool. Yeah, then we get into stuff that is unique to this deck. So, or at least the new cards. So component pouch we've seen before. This is a D20 rolling card. It's a great mana rock. Makes a lot of sense with a commander that wants you to roll dice, that's for sure. So it's nice to have that here. And then the Sword of Hours, which is another uncommon. This one shows up in multiple decks and has you roll a D12 and lets you roll it pretty consistently whenever it hits whenever it deals combat damage, excuse me. You get to roll a D12. So pretty cool way to keep rolling dice, keep triggering Vrondis, which is nice. Whenever it deals combat damage, even on defense, this will trigger, which I actually don't think I realized until this very moment. I didn't do the final design on this deck. That was Glenn Jones. So it's pretty cool. Underdark Rift, great to have this one back again. Nice real spawn on land. Then we're into the reprints. Anger, red-green decks like attacking right away. We've got, of course, some dragon spell cost reduction stuff. Dragon Lord's Servant is here. Ryle, nice card to have as a 1-mana cantrip that triggers Vrondis. Because once again, whenever you trigger Vrondis' ability, you're going to make this 5/4 Dragon Spirit creature token. So yeah, you're going to want that. Those tokens do go away when they deal damage, but you can do things like trigger Colossal Mastery, which is a fun synergy in the deck. Garrick's Uprising, they trigger that too. So lots of fun to be had there. Got some mana rocks, although green doesn't usually get as many mana rocks as the other colors because it naturally has ramp like Explore and Cultivate. But got Arcane Signet, Commander Sphere, Gruul Signet. Arcane Signet basically appears in every commander deck now for the most part. We're pretty happy making that a lot, as happy as we can be with Arcane Signet. I've said my piece about that previously, but now that it exists, we want to make sure there's plenty of them out there. And like Command Tower players have access to them. Heirloom Blade, a good thing to put on a dragon. Soul Ring, got Command Tower. Desert, you might be like, why is Desert here? With I think this is new artwork too. Maybe it showed up online previously, but new to paper artwork, I believe. But anyway, why is this here? Well, how about you try bringing Vrondis in the end of combat step? Pretty funny synergy there. I love finding those random synergies. It's always so much fun. Dragon Speaker Shaman, nice reprint there. A couple lands. Okay, let's go into the new cards. So Berserker's Frenzy. You're gonna roll a 2d20 and ignore the lower roll for this one. And you can totally master Warcraft. That's always the card I think of from original Ravnica. Maybe I've just been playing too long, but you can totally master Warcraft your opponent with this card, and controlling all their blockers is totally brutal. You can either falter them and just hit everyone without any blockers, or crush their entire board. So yeah, this is a card that can deal a lot of damage in Commander. I'll be curious to see how much play this kind of Master Warcraft effect sees. Chaos Dragon, this is one of my faves from the set. I really, really enjoy this. I like that it is an efficient dragon that comes down early and forces you to roll over and over again, so it triggers your D20 effects, which is nice. But also, it switches up who it attacks. It reminds me a lot of Dragon from C17, I think, in the Dragon Commander deck. That territorial dragon that attacks a different player every turn. I always thought that card had pretty good gameplay. These cards, traditionally, we are careful about designing because they tend to play really well and are great in the precons, but have a habit of not making it out into commander decks because of just the variance on them. We'll see if Chaos Dragon bucks the trend. My expectation is honestly that this card will probably not see a ton of play outside of this deck, but I think it's a cool card to have in this deck, and it's a really nice card to exist. I also think these cards are just fun, and more players should try playing with them. So I recommend if you get a Chaos Dragon, just try slotting it into your red deck. See what happens. Add a little bit of attacking variance to your life, you know? Maddening Hex. This card is pretty strong. It's a curse. It pops around players. It's great in Commander. You know, it deals some damage to your opponents when they cast non-creature spells. I've also heard some chatter of this maybe being a cube-worthy card because in one-on-one, you can put it on your opponent, and then when it shifts, it only has them to go back to. It can't go back to you. So I think I asked this in my last video too, but I'd be curious to know from cube players if you think this is a cube-worthy card. But yeah, a nice Commander card nonetheless. Vengeful Ancestor, cool card to have around, makes goad matters, which is pretty cool. I think that'd be a fun thing to do a deck around at some point or another. Yeah, we're doing more with goad in general, but just because we think it's a fun multiplayer mechanic, it encourages people to attack. It lets red play a little bit of politics, which is fun. So cool to have that here. The Bag of Tricks, a D8 rolling card, another nice D&D trope. This is a card, Druid Purification. I think this is going to see a ton of play. I mean, it's one more mana than Rex Sage. It's one less than Acidic Slime, but it has so much potential for upside because you can blow up to 4 in a 4-player game, up to 4 artifacts with it. And while your opponents can opt out, I think usually they'll opt in to nab something. So yeah, I think this card is going to see a decent amount of play. It's not an elf, but I do, highly suggest giving it a try. Indomitable Might allows you to just, get your smashing in. Whatever your biggest creature is will deal damage as though it wasn't blocked, which is, can deal a bunch of damage to your opponent. Neverwinter Hydra. Oh man, I played so much Neverwinter Nights. Whenever I see Neverwinter, that's always what I think of. But anyway, it's finally time for the Hydra Doodle, right? This is a card, a riff on a card from Unstable that made it. I mean, it's, we're doing dice rolling now. So this is sort of a black border Hydra Doodle. It's not exactly the same, okay, I know, but it's kind of a black border Hydra Doodle. And congrats, you made it to the big time. Uses the new ward mechanic though, which makes it harder to kill, which is really nice. Often these big creatures are just so easily removed by a Doomblade that it's nice to have a bit of protection on them. And ward is one that we're really enjoying because it allows players to have outs, unlike Hexproof, which can be very frustrating. But it just taxes you a lot, makes you question, do I really want to do that? So you can expect to see Ward going forward. I've been pretty happy with how Ward is playing out. And Ward 4 is kind of like a good default, like it's going to take your whole turn to deal with this once you have 6 mana kind of thing. So happy to see that one here. Here is the roll 2 dice and choose 1 card for green Wild Endeavor. And this one is pretty sweet, I think. If you get 2 or 3 lands out of this for 6 mana plus some beasts to boot, this card is pretty saucy, so I'd expect this one to see some play. Of course, green has no lack of ramp effects, but, ramp a few lands, get a few beasts. This is a nice card, I think. The Dragonborn Champion. This is nice. It triggers off of the 5/4s that the commander creates, which is really great if those happen to connect. But also do not sleep on the fact that this triggers off of instants and sorceries. So if you have a way to nug all of your opponents for 5 damage, this will draw a bunch of cards. Potentially a card like Crackle with Power or something like that could do the trick here. So a fun card to try and build around. I really enjoyed the if you control a commander, choose both cycle from Commander Legends, and Glenn riffed on that a bit here with Klauth's Will, which allows you to do both things if you control your commander. I think we'll do more things like that in the future. I think that was just a pretty good play pattern. So Melee showed up in Conspiracy 2 and played pretty decently, frankly. But it returns here, I think for the first time on a new card since Conspiracy 2. And probably more exciting thing, especially to certain Saffron Olives out there, is the what I've heard people online calling Pain Harmonicon, of when a creature attacks, its triggered abilities get doubled. This is going to be a blast to build around. Just an absolute sweet deck. Cannot wait to see what cool attack trigger decks people build using Wolfgar. Really happy to have this on a card. I think this is going to be a blast to, once again, just really good time to build around. I'm a huge Panharmonicon sucker, if you couldn't tell. So, show me what you got with this one. I'd be curious to know what you want to combo this with. You can let me know in the comments down below. Then we're into the reprints. Some cool dragons, some sweepers, a lot of stuff you'd expect from a dragon style deck. Here's some, I think this is new art on Gratuitous Violence. Maybe this was in a dual deck or something somewhere, but I think this might be new art for this card. bunch of dragons, lots of dragons. One thing with red-green decks is like to make sure that you can keep your cards up. So Outpost Siege doing good work there. So many dragons. Some Dragon Matters cards like Spit Flame. Of course, that's always really nice. Thunderbreak Regent. Chameleon Colossus, Honorary Dragon. Nice to have that one around here. Kindred Summon's pretty sweet reprint. You can name Dragon for, coming back from C17. Want to get those reprinted. I know that some of them are getting harder and harder to get, especially like the black and the blue ones. So those are on the list to get out there into the world. Dragon's Horde, super thematic card to reprint here. Got our little mana base. Crucible the Spirit Dragon, super appropriate, of course, as well as Haven of the Spirit Dragon. It's funny that here it takes on a bit of a different meaning because Ugin is not in this deck, but there are spirit dragons like the Ancestor, so that's pretty funny. And of course, the Face Commander makes spirit dragon tokens, so it takes on a bit of a new meaning here. All right, going to the back here, we've got our tokens. We've got some 5/5 dragon tokens, big and burly. We've got some 3/3 beasts. We got the Monarch, in case you happen to become the Monarch for any reason. And then here are those Dragon Spirit tokens for Vrondis. You're going to want a lot of them. This deck believes you'll want a lot of them, considering there are 10 that take up the entire backsides of your tokens, Dragon Spirit. So you'll be making a lot of them with Vrondis, which is pretty cool. And you get your on your turn popular Magic formats card here. One more deck to go through. So we're going to finish it off by taking a look at the Bant deck with Gallia, Kindler of Hope on the front, the Aura of Courage deck. Read all about it. But I think it would be more fun to take a look at it. So let's crack this baby open and do another Bant deck. One of the things we talked about is how often can you repeat themes? And we did a Bant deck in C18, of course, that cared about enchantments. And we don't want to do that super often, but when we do, we want to make sure we switch up how the theme plays. So this deck plays a decent amount different than the Bant deck in C18, notably because of the equipment sub-theme, which that deck did not really have. So yeah, some different stuff going on this time around, and just the general play pattern has some different stuff happening. You're not Tuvasa-ing, for example, as much. Estrid is a pretty different ball of wax than what's going on here, but there are certainly plenty of compatible cards. So here's the information on the Aura of Courage deck for those who want to zoom in and read it for yourself. Pause on the screen. Commander rules, and then on this side, we learn about the characters in the deck: Gallia, Kindler of Hope. We've got Storvald, the Frost Giant. That was pretty cool that we did a giant here as the monster in the Bant deck. And then Green-White Legend, Caddy Bree appears, who is a big part of the lore if you're not familiar. She hangs out with the Driss. She's pretty cool. So there's information on the flavor text, our flavor behind these characters. Once again, you can pause and read it all. And now let's take a look at the meat and potatoes here. Let's take a look at this deck. So it's all about, like I said, auras and equipment. So attaching stuff to your legends, or not to your legends, just to your creatures in general. The sound of opening up a commander deck. I love the way that sounds. All right, so here it is, including the thick version of Gallia here. This one is super exciting. 4 mana, 4/4 that lets you Elsha auras and equipments, and then it auto attaches your equipment that you cast this way, which I am super stoked by. Colossus Hammer, anybody? Good times will be had there. This is a pretty fun one to build around. I know it's been compared by some to Tuvasa, but I think it's pretty substantially different than Tuvasa. Considering that one rewards you for having a critical mass of enchantments in your hand. This lets you cast them off the top of your library, and also hits equipment too. Don't want to do that though? No problem. Here's Storvald for you. This takes your deck in a pretty different direction, protecting all your stuff and shrinking/growing. One way that it synergizes with the deck nicely though is making your creature's base power and toughness 7/7 when it's equipped by equipment. It will not impact the equipment size or aura size for that matter. So if you have a +4/+4 equipment and you make a creature a 7/7, well, now it's an 11/11. Additionally, the ward is very nice in an equipment deck because you pay a lot of mana to put auras and equipment on your creatures. Sucks when they get blown up by a Doomblade. Well, this makes it a little trickier for your opponents to do just that. It's a big mana cost commander, so 7 mana, yeah, really plays a different side of the deck. Once again, doing something different than Gallia is doing here. Reprints from the main set, we've got Evolving Wilds as the only main set reprint there. And then, here's the other deck Clay Golem shows up in. And it's a fun Meteor Golem-esque effect. And the other place Ebony Fly shows in. Turns out it's really great to jump up your creatures that have auras and equipment on them to let them take to the skies. Also where Sword of Hour appears as well. Makes sense as an equipment. As you can tell, a lot of these uncommons were kind of strategically designed to either fill roles, like the Clay Golem, which is a way for these kind of decks to deal with any permanent that is a problem, including lands, by the way, which is a difference from Meteor Golem. And, or in this case, it needed to be an equipment that rolled dice so it could fit into both this deck and the red-green deck. Kind of a design challenge, and this is what we came back with. Reprints, a lot of auras and equipment, stuff that you would not normally play in Commander, but fit well into these kind of decks, like Angelic Gift, a can-tripping aura, Griff's Boon, which comes back from the graveyard, very important. Keep in mind, curses are auras too, so it's nice to have those around here. Curse of Verbiosity making an appearance in this deck. Abundant Growth showing up, cantrips like that. Also a big reprint we'll get to here in a second is Utopia Sprawl. I know a lot of people excited about this one. It was becoming difficult to come by, and now you have it for Modern. Bant Charm, of course. And then, yeah, we get into some equipment. Behemoth Sledge, great one to have. Shielding Plaques, a nice little throwback from Dissension. Protects your creature, gives it Shroud, essentially. Or a Hexproof, rather. Colossus Hammer, yep, there it is. There's the combo. Drop that into play with Gallia, auto-equip for +10/+10. It feels good. Feels real good. All right, so that's a bunch of the reprints. Let's take a look at the new cards. Phase Steed. So we saw this on Milla, this kind of when your creature is targeted, you can draw a card effect. This is now a white ability. White gets this. Ari came on the show a little while ago to talk about that. And while Milla is in white-red color pie because of Luca on the other side, Phase Steed finally gives us a mono-white version of this. You can play this in your white deck safely. You get a 4-mana 4/4/2, which is not something you see often in white. So attack, makes stuff indestructible, draw cards as they target your stuff. It's just nice to be able to get some cards back in white, and this is definitely a space I think white. Oops, this is definitely a space white can play in. Sorry for knocking my camera. Just it's so many cards in my hand right now. Holy Avenger. I feel like that's the way I have to say this. Way to an equipment that lets you play auras is kind of a funny mashup and a perfect card for an aura equipment deck. It's the kind of thing that didn't already exist and made a lot of sense when you're building a commander deck that has to care about both. Cheating in auras, pretty nice. Oops, I just dropped this Eldrazi Conscription over here, and there's Mythic Proportions over there, so a lot of fun to be had with this kind of card. Lets you cheat some pretty big stuff in, and also gives the creature double strike. So yeah, when you suddenly have it be Eldrazi Conscription, you will deal a ton of trampling damage. Mantle of the Ancients. This is a card that I think when I saw in this deck made my eyes pop the most immediately, because for 5 mana, it just retethers, replenishes, whatever you want to call it, all of your auras and equipments from your graveyard. It is so easy to dump them in your graveyard with other effects, or these die over time auras tend to end up in graveyards as wraths happen and so on. This brings them all back and then pumps up the creature to boot. So yeah, this is a really exciting card to me. And it gives you card advantage in a white deck, which is really nice. But yeah, gotta get all those ETB triggers on any cool auras you have too. So really excited about that card. Robostars, I think though, is probably the one more people are excited about just generically. It is so hard to deal with this card because keep in mind, when the equipped creature phases out, all equipment on it phase out too, as well as auras, but that includes the Robe of Stars. So when you phase this baby out, the Robe of Stars goes away too. So it's so hard to use any kind of sweeper to deal with this or targeted removal to deal with this. And I expect this to be a staple in a lot of white decks. The +0/+3 is just gravy on top of all that. But this is kind of the cool thing that colored equipment lets us do, because in any color, I would not want this to exist. But in white, I think it's a really great tool, a really great protection tool that white can use to not only protect its creatures generically, but also make sure that its aura'd up creatures and equipped up creatures are safe. SRAM is going to have like a field day with this card, I predict. So get your copies now. Valiant Endeavor, here is the roll 2 dice, choose 1 result for each. I think this one ended up pretty good, where you can kind of choose, interestingly, which size you hit. I appreciate that you don't know in advance what you're going to roll, so you don't always know what you're going to be able to kill, which makes resolving this card a little bit extra fun, which I enjoy. The Diviner's Portent. This is it's more of a classic main set D20 rolling card, which is nice. That you could draw a bunch of cards. There was a lot of discussion around if Scry X was too much, right? Scry X can be very unwieldy, but I argued, as I did some others, but I think I've got a multiverse comment somewhere to prove it, that Scry X and Draw X is kind of similar to Draw X and then choose which ones you want to keep, because you're just going to look at your top X cards, pick the ones that you want, put the rest of them away, and then draw the rest. So I'm okay with this kind of Scry X, Draw X. I would not be okay with this card though if it was just Scry X, because that requires you reordering cards, figuring out the next several turns of the game. But when you're going to draw them anyway, suddenly, you don't have to figure out how to stack 7 cards on top of your library in the right order. So yeah, like this card. The Netherese Puzzle Ward. Here's a weirdo D4 card. I'll say one of my favorite lines of text in all these commander decks is whenever you roll a die's highest natural result to draw a card. That just is a delight to my ears. And I know it will not come up that often, but I think it's a really cool build around die rolling thing to have. The rest of the card, cool, of course, scrying, etc. Scry up to 4 a turn. But the Perfect Illumination to me is just a truly delightful effect. Winged Boots. Speaking of equipment that may become staples, this is in the space of a Lightning Greaves style card. The lack of haste, of course, definitely puts it, I think, a cut below Greaves, but flying in Ward 4 is still pretty nice for blue equipment, and giving your creature flying and hard to deal with, I think, will still be enough to get this into a lot of different decks. Also great flavor text, Get Carried Away. That's delightful. I teased the Equip 10 equipment in my video a couple weeks ago. Here's what it is, the Belt of Giant Strength. Giving creature base power toughness 10/10. This once again still works well with all your other equipment. You give it base power toughness 10/10, and all your other auras and equipment apply on top of this, which is pretty nice. So yeah, this can turn even a small creature into a big threat. And this is an awesome one to auto equip with your commander. I think it's a great version, great way to show off what this Belt of Giant Strength does, D&D trope wise too. Song of Inspiration. Here is a D20 rolling card for green. This is a card that, wasn't that long ago that Restock was getting played a bunch. This is instant speed, and it can give you some life to boot. I like how consistent this card is, right? You just 5 mana instant, get 2 cards back is the baseline, and then you might gain some life on it to boot, which is nice. Here's Caddy Bree. I know in the previews, many players were sad in the main set previews when she did not show up, but don't worry, she was hanging out here in the commander deck. She was green-white color identity, and we couldn't really do both her and Dritz in the main set satisfyingly. So really happy that we were able to put her here in the commander deck. And her caring about equipment makes a ton of sense for her character. So she is a green-white equipment matters card. Many people will have a lot of fun building around her. One of the best card names in the product, I think, Ride the Avalanche. Super fun name. This gives a creature flash and then allows it to come down and pump up something else, which can create some pretty big blowouts. But mostly I just love saying Ride the Avalanche. Then we're on to the rest of the reprints here. Angel Finality, Pure Steel Paladin, really nice reprint to have. Saram, I made this card, so I'm always very partial to it, but in this deck in particular, it's going to do a lot. Winds of Wrath, keep in mind this does not, it still destroys creatures that are equipped, so be careful with that, but Greater Good. Heroic Intervention with new art, by the way. That's pretty cool to get D&D Heroic Intervention art. I prefer this to the Ajani throwing a net art personally. And while we were trying not to do too many more of this kind of effect in green, we're going to keep reprinting the ones that exist, of course, much like how Chaos Warp is not a red card because it hits enchantments, but it exists, so we'll keep reprinting it in commander decks because it's important. And it's nice to have Heroic Intervention here. Yeah, some cards we have not seen. I think Benny Finito is this in Italian. Sheldon loves Greater Good. And we were just talking the other day about getting that card reprinted more often. So it's a fun one. Some cool snap-on equipment, Masterwork of Ingenuity, another really nice reprint to have here, Sword of the Animist. And then you get your little mana base rolling around here, including some brand new art for these Odyssey filter lands, including a new Aleda Danner piece, who I love, but the Sam White piece, not to be undersold either. Both awesome pieces. And some new art for Swiftfoot Boots as well, nice and in flavor for the set. Magical Boots of Striding and Springing. Viridian Longbow, haven't seen you in a while. And then rounded out with a bunch of lands. Mishra's Factory, that's a cool reprint land here. The Thriving Lands, by the way, you'll see a bunch of these in 3-color decks, both here and anytime they might show up in the future. These are kind of a great little add from Jumpstart that were there used to help make your 2-color decks work. But here are kind of a one-stop shop for tap lands that will fix your colors to whatever you need them to be in 3-color decks. So really happy to have those here and to get more of those out into the world. So there you got the mana base. Now going back to the end here, we've got our tokens. We've got some angels. We've got some knights. We got so many saplings, just in case you need them. And then to end, we've got our On Your Turn and Popular Magic Formats card. So there it is, all 4 of the brand new Commander decks. I'm thinking about maybe getting a game together with all 4 of these decks, playing with some of the other designers. If you'd enjoy watching that, let me know in the comments below, and I'll talk with Glenn, see if we can make that happen. It might be fun to pit all 4 of these decks together and show you how we played them and how they can be played. So maybe that'll come out. If you like that idea, I'll might work to make that come out in the next couple weeks. In the meantime, though, I hope you enjoyed this look at Commander, and I hope you are pumped to come check out these Commander decks. Which card are you excited for? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll talk with you again soon. And in the meantime, may you have a lot of fun exploring the dungeons of Commander. You got this. It's not always the same as what you would expect in Magic, which is kind of fun, honestly. Whoa, foil Mythic Book of Exalted Deeds. That looks awesome. That is sweet. Love how the book is foiled out here. Oh, that's awesome. I know Saffron Olive has been talking a lot on Twitter about the Faceless Haven deck, which has been showing up, where you animate a Faceless Haven, put counter on